General, I don't mean to put you on the spot here. I'm just such a fan of this meme. I don't know how long you had to pose for this photo, but this is just a great angle. And I'm not sure why Trump keeps you in the glass like that. It doesn't seem particularly comfortable, but maybe it's time. Do you have any news to break on this program, General Flynn?
Well, I would say to you, Benny, that if I am ready, okay, so I am ready to come out of that glass, that is for sure. There's no doubt about it. I actually think that the nation, and Trump is doing wonderful things, but you know what Chairman Comer just talked about, and among other things, we are still in a massive, massive ideological war going on in this country, and you know there are not going to be any friendlies. If we get to another election and we lose the majority in the House of Representatives, okay, never mind, the next presidential election. And let me just say a couple of things, because the news that Comer really just broke, and I listened to that whole thing, and the news that he just broke was at the very end when he said, if Matt Gaetz, was the Attorney General. I mean, wow. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple of things. Act Blue, there are whistleblowers that are coming forward. You know what, Benny? And this is for your audience that in Washington, D.C., whistleblowers don't trust Congress. Whistleblowers don't trust their own government agencies or their activities that they would typically go toward in the past to get help. Who whistleblowers trust is they trust people like myself. They trust people that have certain organizations that are actually getting stuff done and filing whistleblower cases. I mean, I'm part of an organization, and we have we have a half a dozen whistleblower cases filed that are very powerful. And we file them not only at a civil level of evidence, but before we file them, we make sure that we work them through the DOJ, and we file them at a criminal level of evidence. So there are some whistleblower files that are already on the books. And so when they say, well, whistleblowers aren't coming forward, well, that's because they don't trust you. And I love Comer. I mean, that's not a slam on Comer. This is trust. This has to do with trust. A couple of other things, destruction of evidence, okay? So if it is determined that somebody destroyed evidence, it's simple. In 1 second, we can find out exactly who was the last point of touch of that evidence, and then you begin there. Because every single person that touched that evidence, especially the last point, which is very easily discoverable, you start there. And I can tell you that a lot of this evidence, it's not destroyed. Believe me, it is not. When they say it's destroyed, it's not destroyed. They have it. I guarantee they have it. So now we got to go dig into the bowels of these deep state organizations. And this is the kind of stuff that the American people, I'll speak for myself, but I'll speak for millions of people that I know that certainly follow the kinds of things that I put out. We're not going to stand for, well, the evidence has been destroyed. Okay, then, Department of Justice, drag somebody in, by the short hairs and hold them accountable and start right from the top. He just mentioned Garland. He just mentioned, possibly Ray, and he mentioned a couple of names there. And so these are the kinds of things that have to happen. From back to your question about the glass, right? I mean, this is one of these places now where, and I feel for Marco Rubio, because I'm a big fan of Marco Rubio, and I think Marco Rubio has been actually a vastly better diplomat than I always thought he was a good senator, but he's been a really good diplomat. He's been a really good Secretary of State. But to put him into the position of National Security Advisor, dual-hatted, it doesn't work that way. So where does he go? I can tell you, because I get it all the time. People reaching out to me from all over the world saying, I got nobody to talk to, because we don't have ambassadors out there, right? We got to get ambassadors confirmed and put into place. For every country that's out there, there's not only a foreign minister, but there's also a national security advisor. And there are many countries around the world right now that want to be on Team America. I know this. I know this for a fact. The Southern Hemisphere, countries across Africa, many in Southeast Asia, they want to be on Team America. And they're like, they're picking up a phone and nobody's there to answer. And what I mean sort of metaphorically is that there's nobody out in our embassies. The Secretary of State is a busy man. The National Security Advisor is non-existent right now. People have other things that they have to do inside of the White House. I know the president. I'm a big fan of Stephen Miller, and said Stephen be terrific, as President Trump has said. I'm putting it into the perspective, Benny, of we're running out of time every single day that goes by. And then we talk about this nonsense about Epstein and the destruction of evidence and Act Blue. I can tell you, there's whistleblowers coming out of Act Blue. I'll leave it at that. Okay. You mentioned Kamala Harris, and because I already saw today, like where people are starting to talk about, the next ticket for the presidential election, right? Stop. I want to tell the American people, we have to stop that. We have so much to fix right now, Benny, in this country, domestically and overseas. We can't be worried about who's going to be the next ticket. I can tell you, on the left, it's not going to be Kamala Harris. I've already been in conversations where they're bubbling up, Cory Booker out of New Jersey to make him appear as though he's more moderate. Okay, he's more of a moderate guy. But I don't even want to talk about the next elections. I mean, the congressional elections coming up. Okay, we can start to banter there and start to line people up. But we better be ready to have some things to show, because I love, I've been one of the biggest advocates for Donald J. Trump, and I will continue to be his biggest champion. There's nobody out here that has fought harder for him or stood up for him in a much different way than anybody else in this country. And I'm telling you, it's one thing to sign a bunch of executive orders, but when you take that executive order and you now hand it over to the Department of whatever, the Department of whatever is going to go, okay, and they're just going to go, all right, we'll work on it. We'll do some white papers. They are not going to execute unless you have people, down into their knickers telling them this is what you're going to do. Execute this, right? Where am I today? I'll give you a little hint of where I'm at today. I'm in a place today where we are in the process of examining how the cartels are now using alternative measures, because the border's closed, so they can't physically carry all these drugs over, which they were carrying over physically. Guys carrying over barrels, bags of this stuff. Now they're bringing them in through various, like using produce, like blueberries, watermelons, avocados, right? So those prices are going to go up, because what they're doing is they're bringing in the drugs using those routes. Okay, this is how these guys think, and I call them rat lines. And the reason I know a lot about this is because we did this in the Middle East for years, where we built up how these foreign fighters were coming in. They would use these rat lines. It's the exact same methodology. It's the exact same process. So we have drugs still entering this country. Why, Benny? Because there's somebody sitting around a big oak table in a giant building somewhere in some state capital or in Washington, D.C. that's making decisions to enable this to happen, because this is a multi-billion-dollar market. And back to Comer. Hey, I think he's probably one of the toughest, one of the best guys we got. But I haven't seen anybody bringing in any of these people to investigate them. I haven't seen any committees. I haven't seen Jim Jordan holding committee hearings to drag all these people in. Why not? If some of these people have had pardons, 8,000 pardons by Biden, 8,000. This is insane. So why doesn't our committees bring in some of these people? If they got their pardon, and put them under oath and tell them this is, we need, because they can't say, oh, I'm going to take the fifth. They gotta say what they're asked. They gotta tell the truth, right? So the American people are now at a point in time where, okay, we understand that some of this stuff takes time. That's kind of was the other point of Comer. These investigations take time. Some of this stuff is very well known. We know we have hard evidence of Russiagate, Impeachment-gate, gate this, gate that, hard evidence. The Epstein files. Don't tell the American people it's all been destroyed. Bullshit. If it's been destroyed, Benny, then they better have somebody in handcuffs showing up to whatever court that the Department of Justice needs to bring these people into. And back to national security, because this is my thing. And national security right now is at risk. Okay, because China, and I'll just use China, and I'll wrap the bow here. All right, China just got the position. Okay, the Organization of American States. Nobody even pays any attention to this. Organization of American States just had the election. The building for the Organization of American States is 2 blocks down from the White House. The guy that is now the head of the Organization of American States is so aligned to China. He might as well be, in fact, he is in their pocket. So that's the Southern Hemisphere, all right? So the Southern Hemisphere of this country, where the Chinese are all over the map, and I know in other media they're talking about, what Cuba's doing, what the Chinese are doing in Cuba. I mean, it's the Organization of American States. That's one entity. It's like China owning the NATO. It's like China being in charge of NATO. That's kind of what it is, the analogy would be. The other organization that's up for grabs, and if we're not paying attention, then woe betide us, right? Is the Africa Union. The Africa Union, which is also and people look at these and go, "What? The Africa Union, Organization of American States?" These are blocks of power, and the Chinese have bought their way into it, or certainly influenced their way into it. And there are many countries in Africa that, again, want to be on Team America, and they want to bring their resources, their minerals, their wealth to Team America. And so if we don't come to grips with these kinds of issues, then the Chinese are going to be right there, and they're going to jump in it, right? And they are. The Organization of American States, very powerful bloc. People go, they're not. Yeah, they are very powerful. They're very powerful. And we only have a few friends down in the Southern Hemisphere. When it comes to Africa, same thing. Now, I know Trump is getting ready to go on a tour around the Middle East. What ought to be at the very top of his list, is China. Not, whether or not the Saudis can kick out a few more barrels of oil and drive the price down. They can do that. They can do that yesterday, Benny. It's China. What is your relationship with China? Because I've talked about this a lot. The BRICS consortium, which is a monetary organization, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So now the BRICS is going to bring their prowess into Southern Hemisphere of this country, of this hemisphere that we're in, right? The Central and South America and the Caribbean. And they're also going to come into the Africa Union. And when they come in, and they've already started. They started this a couple of years ago. And the whole idea about changing the monetary value and the wealth of the U.S. dollar, it's happening in Europe right now. I mean, I'm a big fan of Bissett. Didn't know him, don't know him, but I'm watching what he's doing. And he's one of the only guys in the government that has the ability to be able to sanction individuals and sanction governments and sanction entities like a corporation. That's a powerful thing. And I think that there has to be far more discussion about how it affects our national security. So again, back here, we have massive amounts of produce that we bring into this country from the Southern Hemisphere, all right, from Mexico on down through all of the countries, many of the countries in South America. So when that produce is coming in now, and I'm talking blueberries to watermelons, right? What they're doing now is they're loading that distribution network up with drugs, okay? Because the border shut down. And that was right. Trump was absolutely right to do it. But there are these guys, these cartels, these foreign terrorist organizations are finding new ways to get the drugs into this country. Why, Benny? Because it's profitable. And the scale of child trafficking, may go down, but it's not going to go down that much. But the drugs is going to continue. It's going to continue because they're going to find alternative ways. I know these things, and I study these things, and I've studied it when it comes to terrorist organizations when they move foreign terrorists onto battlefields. So this is just the same model, a different product, and a different means to be able to convey it. But this is the kind of stuff this is the kinds of conversations that have to be had right now in our government. And frankly, all the president needs to do is he just needs to be made aware of it. He just needs to know, okay, I got it. And he needs to know that somebody is waking up every single morning and worried about that problem. And right now, I feel very uncomfortable that that's the case. You can't just eliminate, whatever. Mike Waltz now is going off to be the ambassador to the UN, fine. But you can't just eliminate that position and go, okay, Secretary of State, you're now it, tag, you're it. I mean, he's got the rest of the world to deal with. And so because there are a series of processes, and I'm telling you, I am anti-bureaucracy. So, but I can tell you the exact processes of how they work and where they're broken and where they need to be fixed. And to me, this is the kind of stuff this is why you need to have this kind of an entity. And it's up to Trump who he chooses. Like I said, they can break the glass or he can pick Stephen Miller. But one way or the other, you've got to have somebody in this country waking up every single morning that's worried about the national security of our country. And every single thing that happens, every single decision that the president of the United States makes affects national security, whether it's about children, whether it's about drugs, whether it's about cartels, whether it's about China, whether it's about education, doesn't matter. It all affects our national security. And that office is supposed to bring it all together and basically present things to the president. But now I believe, this is, again, I'm speaking for myself, we now must move at the speed of war. We are in a wartime environment. I know, and spiritual war, intellectual war, mental war. Maybe there are components of a physical war going on because it's definitely killing, as Trump said the other day, I don't know what the number is, 200,000, killed in action. We need to use better language, killed in action, right on the streets of America by the Chinese. These aren't kids that have overdosed. They've been killed in action by the Chinese Communist Party conveying through their thugs in these foreign, now designated foreign terrorist organizations, putting drugs on the streets of America to kill us and to destroy the fabric of the moral fabric of our society. That's their intent. So I want to know that there's somebody waking up every day and they're pushing these buttons and and again, the president doesn't have to worry about all this stuff all the time. He's got a lot of other things that he's got to focus on, and he's always got to keep his sort of top 2 or 3, and he's got to push on those. But there's got to be a team of people, and there are teams of people out there that want to help. But what they want to do is they want to know when they say something, somebody at the right level in the White House knows exactly what they mean, and then will pick up a phone or physically go do something about it. And that's I'm splaying on you, Benny, a little bit here about kind of my emotions right now, because I'm watching and I don't want to hear people starting to talk about the next presidential election, especially on the GOP side. How dare they do that? Our country's in a state of crisis right now. And our military is not ready. I love Pete Hegseth. Pete's got the right attitude. He's got the right focus with his idea about lethality. And he's looking at the whole force structure. That's, and he's going to, maybe bigger than the Goldwater-Nichols Act, which I was part of. And I'm just letting you know that we must do those big things, those big tectonic plate shifts. But at the same time, there's got to be action. And there's got to be action taken. And there are elements and organizations and leaders that are available, and certainly inside of our government, that are capable of taking that action. And I think that's what the American people, in fact, I don't think anymore. I know the American people, they want accountability. And accountability is not just in arresting somebody. Accountability is in getting shit done. I'm sorry for my Irish.
Never have to apologize for that, General. So I want to put up this post from you yesterday that excited our production team very much. You said, "I am ready to serve." Now, the National Security Advisor role is open as of last week. And you were in that role and you served in that role. And if you don't mind me framing it this way, until the deep state took you out as enemy number one. And now you're saying that you are prepared to re-enter that role. That's first question. Question number 2. Have you been contacted by President Trump to re-enter the White House as the National Security Advisor?
So answer to question number 1, yes. Answer to question number 2, no. And I've been watching everything and listening and observing, intensely, because, I do believe, as I just, went through my diatribe with you, I do believe that we are in a place where we cannot afford to have, as Trump likes to say, unforced errors. We cannot afford to drop a glass ball right now. And I'm a guy. I'm serving now, Benny. I'm serving now. I serve in just a different way. I have been engaging people in government. I'm still out doing stuff. So I'm serving, and I think that's my message to every American is, how are you serving this country? Because every American needs to serve this country, whether you're inside the government or outside the government. But I'm a guy with a lot of background, a lot of skills, and and I didn't go off into the sunset and go, woe is me. I'm paying close attention to what's happening, around the world and certainly in our country, and I know we have great leaders out there. We have a lot of great leaders that want to serve inside the government. I mean, there's a lot of people that have reached out to me to help, get their name put forward for some position in the government, and I've done that. And I've let it be known. So, at this point in time, the president has, he's got a decision to make, and and whatever he does, I'm going to continue to fight for this country. That's, frankly, I don't know, maybe I'm designed that way. Maybe I'm designed differently. That's the way I was raised. I was, born on an Army base. I served in the military all my adult life. I've been to combat. I know the world. I've lived on, or been or visited certainly on 6 continents. I served in different critical jobs. And yeah, is there a group of people in the deep state that fear me? You damn right they do. They fear me for a good reason. The media, you think the media? Oh my God, the mainstream media would blow a gasket. I would love to just see that, and I mean, whatever. But I do know exactly. I know what I'm talking about, and I know what I would do. That I can guarantee.
I doubt that you would be adding Atlantic editors to private signal chats, just off the top of the dome, based on my knowledge of you and how you work. I don't think that would be happening. That was
I'd put up, you know what I'd do? If I added something, I'd add a really nasty looking meme about them,
Okay, yeah, that's right. All right, so let's if I may, you outlined in your first answer how you would approach the job of National Security Advisor and how you would strengthen American security. How about if you were to be brought hypothetically back into the administration, how would you eliminate the capacity for the deep state to operate the way that it did against you? Because what they did against you was to frame you, and it was illegal what they did. And now that we've learned everything about how it all happened, we know that it was clearly a hit job. It was a hit job intended to target you. And these are the same people that tell us that there's no Epstein files when we have images like this. I just want to pop on over. We didn't get a chance to put this up. It's just something these are the government's own files, General. And it's Jeffrey Epstein's.
The better one, Benny, is the one inside the little closet there that shows all the files. It says
there it is. There it is. Yeah. And then also there's there's drone footage that we should have never seen of them carrying boxes of evidence out of Jeffrey Epstein's island, Little St. James. Yeah. It's maybe we can grab it, but you can see them carrying literal physical boxes of evidence. Where the hell is this stuff, General, based on your understanding? And how would you attack this deep state criminal enterprise inside of our government were you to be brought back as NSA?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there are people inside of the government that I know and that I trust and that are ready to go. Ready to go to the gates, but they're not in positions of authority right now. So there would, for me, trust is number one, and then everything else is China, because China's, talk about, being up our 4th point of contact here. I mean, this is really, really a difficult time with China, and there's a lot of things going on in China. But the deep state part is where. We have people that are running parts of our national security apparatus. Pete Hegseth, Tulsi, Senator or Secretary Rubio, and there's some others down, at the agency and activity level that I do know, and I know that they don't understand. I mean, I love them. I think that they're great, and they're tough, and they're trying to do the best that they can. But believe me, the entire wall around them is the deep state. And they need to understand that there is very, very few people, unless they physically brought them in themselves. I mean, look at what happened to Pete Hegseth's front office. I mean, so there is a wall around that is built around those individuals who are running our national security components, principal national security components, and those walls are designed to block everything. I know how to break through those walls because I know exactly where to go. I know, and this is not just in the military. This is in the intelligence community. This is over in the State Department, in the diplomatic community. This is over in the international community, because there are people, again, that want to be on Team America, and I got to be, I'm very careful about it because I'm not in the government. So those people, if I were in the government, there's a whole other realm of knowledge and information that can be brought to bear against some of these people that are doing things. I mean, what we've learned, and let's just talk about the FBI, what we've learned about the nefarious activities by agents inside the FBI that were doing things, I mean, illegally. And they still haven't been really, brought to account, and they need to be. And again, I'd be asking those kinds of questions. So I'd be asking those kinds of questions of Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, because that's where you're at. You're at that level. The national security advisor, is an equal player, and in some cases, a little bit, I mean, again, for a guy like me, I'm beyond the nonsense stage of my life. The older I get, the smarter my father becomes, all that. I am, in a place now where our country is at risk. We cannot afford to waste a day, wringing our hands or worrying about, hey, when somebody says, well, the evidence has been destroyed, trust me, I know exactly where to start. I know exactly where to start, and I know exactly what questions to ask of people like the department, like the Attorney General or the Director of the FBI. No bullshit. This is done. We're done. I mean, the American people put Donald Trump in office to hold people accountable and to get our country's economy back on the tracks that it could be on, and to get our military and the prestige of our leadership around the world back on the pedestal that we deserve it to be on. But one of the big things that he got elected on was accountability and holding these people accountable. And that's why Biden gave 8,000 pardons, Benny. I mean, so he gave 8,000 pardons. Maybe somebody ought to look into whether or not it's legal for an auto pen pardon, right? I don't know. I mean, maybe it is, but that's why Biden gave 8,000 pardons, because they knew that Trump came in under a mandate of accountability. And so for me, that's the national security advisor holds not only himself, or in my case, but holds the government accountable and goes in and digs and digs and digs, but in a very professional and a very benevolent way, and in a very working as a member of a team, right? A team of people that the president, and staying on the president's agenda. The president has an agenda. It's a very good agenda. It has to be executed. We don't have any more time, I mean, I wish that we were talking about the 100 days, right? But we're not talking about the 100 days. All these accomplishments, the 100 days. I'm not even sure what the 100 days means anymore. But we're not talking about that. Why? Because the narrative changed. They changed the narrative. We have got to make sure that the president owns the narrative constantly. That's why you see him. He's such a master at it, where he pulls the narrative back in every so often by doing things to change the narrative. And he does it in a brilliant way, but it's like only him. He's the only one that's able to do it. He needs help doing that. So we got to be able to do things effectively and to give him victories. And I call them incremental victories. On the battlefield, in order to keep the troops motivated, you better find some wins. And Trump, needs these constant incremental victories so he can, not so the national security advisor can go out there and pat myself on the back, go, see what I'm doing? No, it's so Trump can get up there and go, hey, we just did this, we just did that, and let him have the victory. And that's what will motivate, the troops.
Just a final follow-up question based on what you just said. Part of what motivates this audience, this chat, is justice. At this point in the Biden administration, there was 2,000 charges against January 6 protesters, peaceful protesters. You've talked a lot about China. admittedly, General Mark Milley was communicating behind President Trump's back with China and telling them our military plans, which I'm not a military man, General, but sure as hell seems like treason to me. I'm not sure how you could really describe it any other way. And he's proud of that. He bragged to Congress about it. Yeah. If you were in this role, in this position, what would be happening to General Mark Milley? Would he be facing charges? What would happen also to individuals like James Comer and some of the people that authorized, Peter Strzok, some of the individuals that authorized the spying on Donald Trump? There's been zero accountability for that. John Durham has detailed that criminality pretty extensively in his reports, yet nothing has happened, General. And if there's nothing happening, if there's no one who's been held accountable, then what is the deterrence to this happening all over again?
Yeah. And, you know, and the other stretch to that statement that you just made, Benny, is nobody's really talking about it other than guys like you and me and some of the big influencers out there. You know, every so often it gets raised when Comer says all the Epstein evidence has been destroyed. Okay, so we're going to talk about this, right? Nobody else talking about it. We need somebody of some seniority in, you know, that knows what they're talking about inside of the government, that is talking, saying to the American people, we are examining this. Here's what we're doing, and giving the troops an update periodically. You know, we don't have to get into, well, we've arrested this or we've, you know, got this investigation against this person. But the fact that we're doing something, the men and women of America, the, you know, legal American citizens must be told periodically that we are doing the following things. We are, instead of this, you know, just trust us, we're doing something attitude or statement. We're past that. So people like Milley and others, I mean, you know, they'll be dealt with. I mean, I'm a big fan of what Pete Hegseth is doing over there with the general and admiral, you know, and admirals in the military. I mean, yeah, there's so much that needs to be done, and I like that fact that Pete is talking about it, and I'm going to assume that he's going to show some of that by removing or retiring many of these people very soon, right? I mean, and there's a bunch of other stuff, and I'll come on another time to talk about, you know, the task forces that I think need to be established by the Department of Defense that can lead into other elements of our government that deals with the abuse of COVID as an example, you know, by the Biden administration, abuse that led to death, okay, that led to the killing of people. So these people that committed crimes, you mentioned Strzok, these people that did things, you know, again, they have to be held accountable. Even, you know, there's going to be statutes of limitations and people are, you know, worried about that. Doesn't matter. Let's make sure that if there is somebody, like I said, and Comer just said it, if there's evidence destroyed, if the Epstein files evidence has been destroyed, I can tell you exactly where to begin. And you begin with whoever touched the evidence last, okay? It might be an agent. It might be a senior agent. It might be Director Wray himself. But whoever touched that evidence last, start with them and bring them in handcuffs and start questioning them. And they will tell you, well, this guy told me to do that. This guy told me to do that. Okay, bring them in. Bring them in. I mean, and we have to move at a different speed. We can't move at the speed of what is happening to Trump right now, where the delaying tactics. This is their strategy. I mean, their strategy is so clear to me. The delaying tactics by the left to put everything into injunctions against the president's decisions as the executive, as the commander in chief, the president of the United States and the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America. He can't even do it. You know, they're tying his hands, right? So the president needs to stop all that. He needs to say, we're going to continue to execute, you know, justice and form some little task force, fight those little battles. You know, maybe Chief Justice John Roberts will wake up one of these days, or maybe Chief Justice Roberts, maybe that was his name on the Epstein manifest. Okay? Maybe. I don't know. There's a John Roberts listed there 4 times. No, I never heard him say it. I heard the John Roberts on Fox News say it wasn't me. Right? So I'm not kidding, Benny. I'm in a place now where we have to get very serious. No more laughing matter about our country. We're in a state of crisis. I do believe that. I do believe we're in a state of crisis. The Chinese are not going to roll over. The radical Islamists are not going to roll over. Mark my words. And I said this a little bit this morning on one of my posts, I think. You know, and because I watched what happened in New York City with the TDA crowd from Venezuela, and then some stuff going on up in Boston, and then out in Washington State where you got some Palestinian protests that are burning something. I mean, we're coming into the summer months again. Okay, school's out, right? And I just have a funny feeling that we might even see some breaking out of violence in America this summer because, you know, what does it do? I mean, nobody's getting arrested, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so I think if they get away with it, they'll do it again because they got away with it in 2020. They'll do it again. And what does it do? It takes the narrative, it delays. It's a strategy with tactics to delay the inevitable, which is, you know, Trump is not able to complete his first, you know, year's agenda, which is a big agenda. And, you know, and I want it to work, Benny. I want President Trump to be massively successful because guess what? You know, we only have one Trump, right? We only have one guy. I mean, everybody else past him, we'll never have another guy like this. I mean, it's an extraordinary time in history that we are living in, and I'm excited to be alive. I'm fired up about it. You know, I'm out here, you know, hooking and jabbing in my own way, and I appreciate your audience and you allowing me to come on to say my piece.
Well, the audience certainly appreciates it, General, and they love hearing from you. You can obviously follow the General and find the General. He has millions of followers here on X, for instance. Also has a spectacular avatar on X with the flying eagle and what looks like a verse or a Bible verse. It's beautiful. Maybe you could just really quickly here, General. When Mark Milley does tell China about our military movements, is that treason?
You know, I don't know the exact legal definition off the top of my head, but I will tell you what. He admitted to that.
Yes.
And he said it like almost like flippantly. And I know Mark Milley, and I just when I heard it, I was like, you've got to be shitting me. You can't. Why would you ever do that? You never, ever give an enemy, and I don't care what level you're at, you know, you leave them with a sense of uncertainty about what you may or may not do. That's why I love Trump in terms of being a commander-in-chief, because he leaves a sense of uncertainty. When Milley calls up somebody and says, I'm going to call you if we're going to attack, and I don't know, you know, if that was the exact words, but it's close to that. And I'm like, God, Mark, how could you ever do that? You know, why would you ever do that? You know, in fact, that's not your responsibility to do that. You report directly to the President of the United States. You're the principal military advisor by the Constitution, by law, to the Commander-in-Chief and to the President of the United States of America. That's who you should have been calling up. If you had a gripe about something he was doing, call him up and have the guts to say to, you know, Mr. President, I got a problem with something that, you know, and I want to talk to you about it, because that's your constitutional duty, you know, General Milley. Instead of going and picking up a phone and going, you know, to whoever, you know, in China and saying, hey, man, I'm going to call you up if we're going to attack. I mean, God help us. But that's the mentality, Benny. That's the mentality and the culture that was created in our military. And it started under Obama, by the way. I want to throw his name in here because that SOB, you know, fundamentally transforming America. This is what we're going through. This is an ideological war that we are facing right now. And we better come to grips with this. All these political people, all these politicians that run for office, they go Democrat, Republican. Forget that. Forget that. This is about whether you believe in America and you love this country and you want to see our country move forward the way it's always been for another 250 years, or you're going to be part of this sort of globalist, communist, radical, fundamentalist crowd that frankly exists. And they have names and they have faces and they have lots of money. And Act Blue, an organization, like, to tie that in, Act Blue is kind of it's sort of like rocket fuel for some of these people, right? how they do it. That's I can tell you right now, because we are talking to whistleblowers, that's massive amounts of fraud. I don't want any speculation. I don't want speculation. Go do it. Comer, go do it. Jordan, Speaker Johnson. I mean, God, what has Speaker Johnson done? You got me on my soapbox.
I just wanted the general to general take, but man, we are getting the full carpet bombing here of what would happen if we made National Security Advisor General Mike Flynn. I think that it would be a spectacular move. I've posted the meme. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I personally believe should happen. And the most entertaining outcome is always the most obvious. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Follow General Mike Flynn, obviously, for the truth. One of those people one of those rare people who like fights for us and really means it. Godspeed, General.
Thank you, Benny.
Godspeed. Ladies and gentlemen, Florida Representative Greg Steube, who has the patience of Job, is on the line, and he has some big news for us and our program, something that is a bit of a passion project for me, one of my earliest black pills. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Congressman to the program.